Welcome everyone to weekly Tanya class. We're studying today chapter 23. The general context of this group of chapters that began from chapter 18 or 19, which is going to last us until the end of chapter 25, is explaining us the short, long way, the quickest method to get in control. You have like the emergency brake. If someone is facing some temptation, some hardships in serving God, so if there's a long way of working on yourself and changing your personality, so you won't want to do these things. But till you get there's this emergency brake that you pull that could stop you from sinning, and that's that concept of Mesirus Nefesh. Every Jew, we spoke and learned, has a potential within him to give his life for God. When he faces the true reality that serving God is the only way he's meant to live, that's how he was created, and that's how he wants to live, and living a life which goes against that is not worth living. So we have to just apply this concept not only to big sins and big mitzvahs like accepting, God forbid, another faith, even to small things. And that's what we're focusing on now, on explaining how every mitzvah in essence is an act of accepting Hashem as King, and every opposite of a mitzvah is just as bad as abandoning Hashem, faith in Hashem.
Every mitzvah, say again please?
Every mitzvah is an act of declaring the oneness, the absolute oneness of Hashem, and every sin is the opposite of that. So if you're ready to die for God, then you should be ready to overcome temptation for God. The truth is it's the same thing. It's just a smaller dosage of the same potion.
How do you say temptation, Bibrit? Temptation?
Tava.
Tava is desire.
Desire.
Yeah.
So in chapter 23, we focused on the philosophy behind it in these two chapters about the oneness of Hashem, what it means, and now we're applying it to day-to-day life. So we open with a very interesting statement from the Zohar. The Zohar compares the 248 mitzvahs, 248 positive mitzvahs, to the 248 limbs of the king. The body of the king, that was the topic. So the body was spelled wrong, but the bodiless.
Bodiless, yes.
The bodiless body of God.
B-O-D-I.
Yeah, when we speak about Hashem's body, it consists of 248 limbs. We don't mean it literally, physically. God is beyond that.
But they don't say Hashem made us in His image, they say?
He made us in His image, but it doesn't mean that He has a body.
What does image mean?
That's right.
But the king does have a body.
The
Jewish king.
Jewish king, yeah, but when he's talking about the body of the king, we're talking about Hashem Himself. It's obviously a mashal. It's an allegorical statement, like especially in general, Torah speaks that way about Hashem, especially Kabbalistic works. But what we're explaining is the function of the mitzvahs. The function of the mitzvahs work like a body to a soul. We know of Hashem as the creator of the world. We know Hashem as a father, a loving father, a king, a judge. But another thing that we have to remember about Hashem is that He's an investor, especially in the relationship between us and Hashem. How do investments work? You have people that have a lot of money, like a developer. He invests in a building, and he rents out the units, or he sells them, and he makes back what he invested. It said that the world, this is a verse, it's a pasuk, is Olam Chesed Yibana, the world was created with kindness. That Hashem created the world as an investment. There was a purpose why He did it, and He put in the capital. on his own, hoping. Hashem is not just hoping. Obviously, Hashem knows that by creating man on earth, Anochi Asisi Eretz, Hashem says, this is brought in Yom Yom. I created man. I created earth. I'm sorry. Anochi Asisi Eretz, Adam Allah Barasi, and upon it I created man. So the word Barasi, that's the Baal Shem Tov, or the Magid, is the gematria, the numerical value of Taryag. Barasi 613. The mitzvahs. Hashem invested capital, created the world, and we have to, once He created us, we have to justify the continued existence of the world. To keep it going, we have to do mitzvahs. We have to serve Hashem. That's not, otherwise, there's no purpose of the world existing. It says that Hashem, the world was trembling about the day Hashem gave the Torah. So I was speaking about it before. It says, till the day Hashem gave the Torah, the world was trembling. And on the day the Jews accepted the Torah, the world came to rest. Why is that so? Because the world was in peril, wasn't sure. Only if the Jews will accept the Torah will the world continue to exist. And the Jews accepted, they said, we will do and observe the mitzvahs and listen to Hashem, the world now could really rest and know that it's here to stay. So, the way we keep the world in existence is by observing the Torah and the mitzvahs, especially by doing the mitzvahs. It says that Hashem looked into the world, and into the Torah, and created the world. And the Jewish people, they do the same thing. They look into the Torah, and they follow the mitzvahs, and they keep the world in existence. And that's why we use the analogy of a body of 248 limbs. The way the relationship of the body and the soul, I think I mentioned this last week, the Gemara says that just like the soul fills the body, Hashem fills the world. There we explained that refers only to one level of creation, because unlike the soul and the soul doesn't create the body. Just the body has life without the soul. Just that the body won't be active without the soul. Eventually it's going to disintegrate. But Hashem is, not only is He the soul to the world, He's also the core existence of the world. But that's on a deeper level. But on a more basic level, which we're talking about over here, the idea of the mitzvahs, the mitzvahs are like the soul to the body. The world, Hashem keeps in existence in His own way, by speaking it into being. Every moment, God says the 10 utterances and the world keeps going. But in order to keep those 10 utterances coming, so to speak, we have to do the mitzvahs. And the mitzvahs are like the soul. The existence of the world is done by Hashem through His own way. We cannot really create the world. We could give Hashem a good reason to keep investing His words into the world, and that way make the world keep going, and not only keep going, but also improve. And also by doing mitzvahs, not only we keep the world in existence, we also improve the world. If anyone ever paid attention, just to this concept, we see it in the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe Siddur. I'm not sure how it is in other Siddur. I think everyone says this on Shabbos. Right before Baruch Shama, we have a Deres V'Amunah, and before that we have a chapter from Tehillim, Hodu. It's called the Hallel. It's called Hallel HaKatam. There's two types of Hallel. This is called Hallel. It's a version of Hallel, which was said. It's the Hodu. We say it on Pesach, also right before Hallel. And usually the Alter Rebbe below the Siddur, the Alter Rebbe's, the Tanya Siddur was based on Kabbalah, but all that was hidden. Just a few places the Alter Rebbe puts in the Kavanot. So in Hodu, there's Kavanot. There's, in the middle of the line you have Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Yeah. After 10 verses comes a Yud. After 5 verses comes the Hey, after 6 verses comes the Vav, and after another 5 verses comes the Hey. Altogether, 26. The name of Havaya, Yudke Vavke, which is one of God's names, the main name of God, is connected to Chesed, to kindness. This means that Hashem created the world, we said, with kindness. There was 26 generations from when Hashem created the world until He gave the Torah. Right? We read in the Pirkei Avot. There were 10 generations from Adam till Noach, 10 generations from Noach till Avraham, and from Avraham till Moshe Rabbeinu,
6.
there were 6 generations. Moshe was the 7th. And those 26 generations, the world was existing solely on Hashem's kindness. There was no mitzvahs yet. The Avos, the patriarchs, they did mitzvahs, but their mitzvahs did not have the power of mitzvahs. Our mitzvahs today accomplish more than their mitzvahs did back then. Their mitzvahs did not have the power to invest life into the world. The world was existing purely on Hashem's kindness.
Purely on Hashem's kindness?
Purely on Hashem's kindness. 26 generations, some of them were very sinful, in fact, most of them.
Edom or...
Enosh and Sodom and Amorah and the Egyptians. The world was not a world that had, the Jews. How many Jews lived in the world?
Few.
Very few, right?
Enosh, you said?
Enosh was the first. He started in his times of idol worship began. So it took the world a couple hundred years, and it was already.
But Enoch, didn't Hashem take Enoch up? He never died, Enoch?
That's enough. That's what Enosh.
Oh, Enosh is something. What is Enosh?
Enosh is another man. He was, I think, the son of the great grandson of the 4th generation
Of Adam?
of Adam. Cain already has sinned, but then it was just it was an isolated event. But then a few generations later, the world became filled with negativity. So the truth is, the world didn't really deserve to exist yet at all. Not only didn't it deserve to exist, it deserved to be destroyed. But God kept the world in existence, waiting for the Jewish people to come around, for Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov and the tribes and Egypt and Yosef and Moshe Rabbeinu. And then He gave the Torah. When the Jews received the Torah, the world settled into being. Now the world knows there's Jews. The Jews will do mitzvahs. The world will exist, and that's why the Zohar uses the analogy of a body. The body, in order to continue its existence, the body exists. We only know of a body without a soul after the soul leaves. So when we meet a body, we only know of the body with a soul after the soul leaves. Then we realize that there are two entities really. The world is a body which exists on Hashem's speech and Hashem's will. However, to keep the soul in the body, to keep the world thriving and growing, now we're not talking about spiritually, just for the world to prosper physically, mitzvahs are needed. In the times that the Jews did all the mitzvahs, the world was on a much higher physical level. It says that in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, there was the fruit tasted better. After Hashem to remove the Beis HaMikdash, we stopped doing many mitzvahs. So there's a very limited amount of life that comes to the world. It's enough to keep it going. When Mashiach comes, the world will become a much better world, physically. Aside from the spiritual things that will happen. Physically, people will be healthy, there will be an abundance. All these things we're talking about physical dimensions of the world when Mashiach comes. Why is that? Because there will be a restoration of the mitzvahs. You can think of it as the world now as a body till Mashiach comes is like a body of a sick body. So it's alive, but it's very weak. When we do mitzvahs, we add life. The more now what we could do with the mitzvahs that we do have to do them better. Well, it brings more life. That's one of the big innovations of Kabbalah over the old way of serving God. The idea of mitzvahs, my connection to Hashem. All different reasons why we do mitzvahs, to keep the Jews one nation, etc., which are all true things. But people look at their mitzvahs as their own relationship with Hashem. The Kabbalah teaches us, Chassidus expounds on it, is that my mitzvahs have an effect on the whole world. When you do a mitzvah, you're bringing life to the entire world. You're making the apples taste better. Or more, you bring peace. Yeah, we're 50 years from the 6-Day War. So when the war was started, a little before, the Rabbi spoke about tefillin. When Jews put on tefillin, Jews do mitzvahs in general, tefillin is a special mitzvah in that vein. It brings security, it brings peace. When a Jew in Brooklyn or Paris or Moscow was putting on tefillin, it helped soldiers fight the war. And Same thing enough to maintain peace in the world. When Jews do mitzvahs, it has a very, very profound impact on the world, on the physical well-being of the world. Because mitzvahs are a way to bring in the divine into the world. The world is a physical world, but it needs a creator. And the creator is invested. God is the investor of the world. When we see that we're doing our job, then he invests more. Yeah, think of a company that has an investor. The company brings in more capital to the investor, so to speak. So the investor puts in more. The company brings in a steady amount of profits, then the investment stays the same. Is that how that works? I'm investing in a company, so the company brings a steady margin of profit, and I keep the investment more. If I see that the company is pushing higher, I'll invest more. That's how it is. God sees us doing mitzvahs. He invests, gives us more. A Jew gives tzedakah, God gives him more money. A Jew learns Torah, God gives him more money because he'll use that money and that success and that health to do more mitzvahs. That's how we. That's our. So it says that we're partners to Hashem in creation. What does that mean? It doesn't mean we could create a world, but we could keep the creation in existence. That's what it means. That we're partners. We could bring the world to perfection. Not partners in the sense that God needs us, but partners that God shows us, and He gave us the ability to keep the world in existence.
So like, I want to bring in the Rebbe here a little bit in the sense that you hear this opening with the 248 mitzvahs, which are like the limbs, and also regarding mitzvahs commands. I mean, we know that the Jews stood at Mount Sinai, and God started talking, and they're like, no, we want to get it from you, Moshe, and you get it from God. So Torah Tzivilana Moshe, Marshak Yaakov. Who's commanding? Who's the commander? Who's issuing these mitzvot? It's Moshe Rabbeinu. He's really the commander here on behalf of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it seems like when this gets filled in, this is like the secret. Like when this gets filled in, who is really issuing the commands? It solves a lot of problems. It makes things a lot clearer. Because I just want to sort of include this idea to remember that. Also, it's completely consistent with the Rebbe's urgent demand for the revelation of Mashiach, the King that we will relate to, through whom we will relate to God. Because God is so abstract, but the King, we can relate to the King, the human being who is a king, who he will on that level with God, and then we'll be able to connect. The intermediary who connects. So it just seems relevant in this chapter that's talking about limbs, comparing the mitzvahs to limbs, limbs of the king.
That's actually why the only way for a Jew to really do his mitzvahs right is by being, I learned in chapter 2, by being connected to the Rebbe, to the tzaddik of the generation. He's a living example. And later on in chapter 42, the Alter Rebbe discusses the concept of Moshe Rabbeinu that you're bringing up there. It's a whole chapter dedicated to the Moshe, which is within every Jew. And to reach into the Moshe within every Jew, you need to be connected to the general Moshe. We see those that are connected to, in general, to a rabbi, to a mentor, and especially a mentor who's someone greater than yourself and greater than everyone else, because it sees that Moshe of the generation. That definitely elevates your mitzvahs to a much higher quality. So that's the idea of the limb. I have eyes. Yeah, their eyes are flesh. Eyes are flesh. When my eyes are in sync with my soul, my eyes could see. And my hands are in sync with my soul. My hands could do things. My fingers could move, could write, could paint, could type, could count money. And my legs, the same thing. You have to have. There's the soul. So the mitzvahs, the physical mitzvahs. And this actually counters one of the problems that happened with what's called Chakir, Jewish philosophy, was that Jewish philosophy saw the mitzvahs, the physical mitzvahs, as those that were dedicated to halacha knew that regardless you have to do it. The problem began with there were those students of Jewish philosophy which started to see the mitzvahs first as just different ways. The secular Zionist movement unlike Reform and other types that were totally irreligious and wanted to change religion, they said that we respect religion. Jews in exile and the diaspora must keep mitzvahs. That's what keeps them together as a nation. The sages of the Talmud. I was reading Professor Baranover. He was a Baal Tshuva, but he writes in his memoir how he became Baal Tshuva. And in the beginning, he was reading some of his stuff when he started to get close to Judaism in Russia. It was very hard. So he writes a little poem that he wrote. It's like, wow, the sages of the Talmud were so bright how they invented the mitzvahs which kept the Jews all together throughout exile. Jews in Russia and Jews in Africa, they put on tefillin so they knew they were Jews. So that was the philosophy, and that's why so many rabbis came out against them.
What was his name? Rev what? Rabbi?
This professor?
Yeah.
Professor Baranover.
Oh, he wasn't a rabbi.
No, he is.
Baranover?
He's still alive, and Hashem give him a refuah shlema.
Baranover?
Baranover. Herman Baranover.
He
Liberow.
partnered on a book, The Ultimate Jew.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he co-authored that book about the Rebbe.
What's it called?
The Ultimate Jew.
So he writes of a poem, but that's how they saw it, and they said. But now the Jews have their own language and their own country. There's no need anymore for mitzvahs. So mitzvahs were needed in the past as a way to connect Jews together, to keep us as a nation. Now that we have a homeland, the need for mitzvahs disappeared, which is total nonsense. If you know what a mitzvah is, that was one way that So some looked at it as on that level, which is true in a sense, but not only that. And others looked at it as symbols. And it's reported that in Spain, 600-700 years ago, where philosophy was very common, there were many Jews, poets and philosophers who didn't put on tefillin. They were very, very, very much knowledgeable, but they didn't feel a need to do mitzvahs. So that's why the sages made different decrees that a person should not start studying philosophy before he has a good command of the halacha, the Talmud, the basics of Jewish observance. But Kabbalah presents a different philosophy, which it's a philosophy and explains the importance of the physical mitzvah. The mitzvah consists of two parts. It's the divine, the symbolism that's in it, the godliness that's in it, the idea behind it, but that's only a soul. A soul without a body is very holy and very interesting but it cannot get anything done. The mitzvahs need the body. When the physical tefillin, they draw down the symbol of tefillin, which is God's wisdom, into the world. The physical tzedakah draws God's kindness into the world. God's kindness is spiritual. God's wisdom is spiritual. The only way for it to penetrate the world and to affect the world and to make the world connected to its creator is by doing the physical act. So my physical act is not only keeping me tied with another Jew, and it's not only me doing my creator's will, it's I'm benefiting every single Jew and every single person in the entire world. When Jews do mitzvahs, the whole entire world benefits. So that's why nations that have the greatest concentration of Jews were more successful. Look at Spain. When Spain got rid of his Jews, what happened to Spain?
Went down.
Went down. It used to be one of the greatest powers in the world, and it went down.
Why did they do that? The Inquisition all of a sudden. What was there a reason? Was there a depression or something in the economy that they wanted to take the Jewish people?
I think it was in a boom.
Oh, you think it was during a boom?
It was religious, so to speak, zealousness.
Overzealous.
Christian,
yeah.
Well, didn't they tell him convert or we'll kill you?
It was what's called anti-Semitism. Then they didn't call it that. Now that's what they call it.
You have a choice.
So that's the idea of mitzvahs. So in essence, getting back to the topic that we're talking about, what's every mitzvah? Every mitzvah is a way to introduce and to keep the flow of the oneness of Hashem, that perfect oneness, the concept of unity, that Hashem is one and only, into the world. Every mitzvah is a channel through which to bring out to the world that its life is exclusively God. and on a deeper level, it's whole reality. It's more than that. This is all. This is a inner layer, but it's also a shell. Deep down, the point is that the world should realize. Why does Hashem make it that those who that a world which observes the mitzvahs is a world which is doing better, is better off. It's in order for the world to realize that it's here for Hashem's sake. Hashem is like the investor. Yeah, the development is for who? It's for the investor or for the
both.
Or for the tenant. But both gain. But the investor he's the one that's investing, and he makes the main gain.
Right.
Hashem knew that the world is a good investment, and He invested in it. And the more we prove that and we bring out the potential of the world, the more He invests in it. And when Mashiach comes, Hashem will be totally invested in the world, and the world will definitely gain from it as well. The world will do very well. Why? Because the world will be doing God's will in the most perfect way. Not only Jews, also Gentiles. That's one of the reasons why the Rebbe started the campaign of reaching out to Gentiles, to non-Jews, to do mitzvahs, the seven Noahide laws. Because it's not just we were created to serve God. The whole world was created to serve God. Mashiach says He will correct the entire humanity to serve Hashem. And you said unison.
Yeah, unison.
Unison. So that's why we call the mitzvahs the limbs of the king. The mitzvahs are the way to draw down godliness into the world. Every mitzvah is a limb. Just like the eye brings out from the soul the power of vision, and the hands and the feet the power of touching, the power of walking. So mitzvahs, they bring Hashem into the world. And that's why, the interesting relationship of the body and the soul is so that it's not two separate entities. Well, like I said, we know we only realize that the soul and the body are separate when the soul departs. When it's born together. And that's why whenever I feel like doing something, I don't have to send a command. It's not a computer that sometimes can get stuck. You send a command to the different things, different functions. Soul and the body, generally when the body is healthy, they work in perfect harmony. I want to move my hand, I move my hand. I don't have to send messages. My hand is wired so strongly with the soul that my desire, which is the expression of the soul, wants to go like this, so it goes like this. I don't have to, it doesn't take time. And that's a mitzvah. A mitzvah, in essence, a mitzvah is a holy deed. Well, what's holy about it? I put on tefillin, I light Shabbos candles. The leather that I made it tefillin, the same cow, part of it could become a shoe or a belt. Part of it becomes tefillin. Or the candle, I could light a candle at a party, or I light it for Shabbos or Chanukah, it becomes a mitzvah. What is the difference that went out between the, why is the mitzvah holy and this not holy? And candle, it could be kosher, but it's not holy necessarily. It could even be the opposite. A person could use the same material to do the opposite of a mitzvah. The reason for this is because why is the mitzvah holy? Because it's being used for a holy purpose. And when you use the mitzvah for a holy purpose, it becomes like a limb, like a body to the soul. There's the soul, which is the symbolism and the spiritual meaning behind the mitzvah. And when it's being invested into something physical, then that physical thing is like my hand moving upon my desire to move. It becomes nullified to the soul. When I take a piece of leather and use it for a mitzvah, although the physical is not holy naturally. That's what makes it physical, the fact that it's not holy, that it's a lower level. However, since I am using it for a mitzvah, it becomes holy. Just like my hands are not nearly as powerful as my soul, the power of touch that I have in my soul. But they're connected. When I want to move, and I move, my hand is actually letting the energy of the soul flow through it and do what the soul wants to do. So this hand, it becomes elevated. It's not just another physical thing that I have no control, have no command of. I do have a command of it, I do have control, and it works as a vehicle for me. So that's the actual physical being of a mitzvah. That's why mitzvahs are holy. Torah is holy. Tefillin are holy. We have to treat them with holiness. Why are they holy? Because they contain in them holiness. They are in a revealed way an object which is a conduit for holiness. Godliness flows through this into the world. That's the actual object of the mitzvah.
So once you say something is a Shem mitzvah, can you turn around and say do something against that?
You're not allowed to. Certain things. I'll take it even further. You have the straps of your tefillin, right? What happens if your tefillin tear? Yeah. So you want to replace. It says if your head tefillin, which are considered holier than the hand tefillin, you cannot take straps of head tefillin and use them for the hand tefillin. Once it became holy, you can't go a level down. That's why the concept of geniza. You have a piece of paper, the Torah is printed on it. You can't throw it in the garbage. It's holy. It has to be respected. In the Beis Hamikdash, if they had the clothing of the Kohanim, were not allowed to be put in the garbage. They would use them for wicks for the Beis Hamikdash. It had to be used for a mitzvah. These are a higher level of holiness. Then there's things that are in between, like truma, which is the food that we give to the Kohanim. It has holiness to it. It cannot be desecrated. It cannot be used in a disrespectful manner. For example, it says that the Kohanim are not allowed to smear, I think, themselves with oil of truma. It can only be eaten. The Torah gave it to be eaten, which is a higher level of usage. There's many levels of holiness. And once something becomes holy on that level, although it's physical, like any other physical oil, physical wick, or physical leather or wool, once it becomes holy, or even it's extended to a higher level of holiness, it doesn't go down. The holiness remains in it. It's because this piece of physicality became a body to the soul, which is godliness, and the godliness doesn't leave. The body and the soul, once they unite, they become one organic unit. That's the concept of kedusha. That holiness penetrates physical things. And that's what the avos they didn't have. That they didn't have that power. The avos, their mitzvahs, they made a good smell in the world, so to speak. The Medrash says, but they didn't penetrate the world.
And we can.
And we can.
Why couldn't they?
Because they didn't have the power. That's the Torah wasn't given yet. That was the
Before
Torah.
Matan Torah.
That was the Torah. That's the real effect
The changing
of the Torah.
point. Yeah. And Matan Torah was 26 generations after
creation. For 26 generations, the world wasn't giving any returns. The investment was in jeopardy. That was possible to withdraw the investment.
Right.
Only when the Jews got that power, and even Avram wasn't enough for that. Besides the mitzvah of Bris Milah, which is one mitzvah that they did have, which penetrated physicality, but otherwise there was no such a thing. So that's one level of holiness that penetrates the person and doesn't leave. Not the person, sorry, the object of the mitzvah. Further in the chapter, the Alter Rebbe tells us about another level. When you are doing a mitzvah, although you don't become as holy as the mitzvah itself, in a sense, a Jew is holier than even the mitzvahs. During the Second World War, there was a fund that was established to try to preserve Judaica and all Jewish books. The previous Rebbe was very not happy with it. He said it's more important to save Jewish lives than originals of the Talmud and the Beis Hamikdash even. The previous Rebbe didn't say this, but the Jewish body in one way is holier than a Torah. That's the halacha, that you sell a Torah to save a Jewish life. Or even more, that we have is that you sell a synagogue in order to build a mikveh, because building a mikveh promotes creating Jewish bodies. It's more important than a synagogue where Jews will study Torah and do mitzvahs. The fact that the
Torah is created for the Jew.
That's exactly, the Torah is here for the Jewish people. But here we're not getting really into that. But the point that we're making over here is that when a Jew does a mitzvah, he becomes a chariot, a merkava, a vehicle So we're going to learn later on in Tanya, he gives us the example that when the sages obligated us, that when you see a Jew doing a mitzvah, you have to stand for him, even though he's not a sage, he's not a rabbi, he's not a holy person.
To give respect, to stand
To
up.
give respect. Why? Because a Jew who does a mitzvah is a holy person. He is now a vehicle for godliness, for the divine. A Jew does a mitzvah, so a tzaddik is someone that his whole life is focused on mitzvahs. So that's why a tzaddik, even if he's not doing a mitzvah actively now, his body is a vehicle for holiness. That's where we learned that the Avos, the Avos Mitzvah and Gaka, they were called a Merkava. It was actually a band. I don't know if they still sing.
think so.
You know Merkava? You heard
The
about it?
Merkava
Heard
band,
of it.
yeah.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
They're not part of Tzvat Hashem or something?
It's some
I
Chabad
don't know.
guys.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, it's Chabad.
So I guess the symbolism behind the name was that they're using their music as a vehicle to spread godliness, to spread Hasidus and Judaism, which is one of the ways you could do it. Music is a very good way.
I used to see them. They would. I don't know. I haven't seen the Merkav band performing in a long
for a
time.
while.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they dissolved. Happens with bands, right?
Yeah.
But Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov and other tzaddikim, they were a merkava. They were literally a chariot, a vehicle for holiness. What does a vehicle mean? It's not like today's cars that they're all automated, so you don't really have real control. You know, you had the horse and wagon. You stopped the horse. The wagon didn't have its own agenda. Yeah, today the cars, they have the agenda of, you're driving the car and you have the technician, the programmer who has his own agenda.
What do they call the cars now that'll drive themselves?
The driverless cars.
That's it
Yeah.
called.
No, I think they have another name
But
too.
the truth is, Merkava means that I have a vehicle. It doesn't have its own agenda. It's not going anywhere without me. It's going to go where I want it to go, and it's going to stop when I want it to stop. So
The pre-2018 cars.
yeah,
Yeah.
even I was saying,
Pretty
I drive my father's car sometimes. That has the park sense and all that stuff, which is very
Fancy.
annoying. I find it very annoying. It brakes for you. It doesn't let you do. It doesn't trust you.
It's not a Merkava.
It's like the government today. It doesn't trust you to make any decisions. They have to do everything for you. They don't rely on the goodwill of the people anymore. So the video camera is nice, but to give you a little bit to actually brake for you.
Oh, it breaks you too?
Yeah, you get too close, it breaks.
It's good.
Huh?
Experience.
Yeah, it could be counterproductive.
I don't know. I'm not sure if that part is
Autopilot they have. Yeah, they have the Tesla has autopilot. Self-driving.
Crash. That's very good.
I think they have cars that if there's someone in your blind spot, if you're going to turn, it'll
Yeah,
warn you
they stop
immediately
it, they
or
warn
stop
them.
you.
Yeah,
I don't know.
no, the other way around. So that's not. But so Merkava is that you're in control. It's not doing its own thing. It's doing exactly what you want. You stare at right, it goes right. You stare at left, it goes left. So the holy Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they were, and other tzaddikim were called a Merkava. They were a vehicle to Hashem. They didn't have their own agenda. Their whole life, not only when they did a mitzvah, not only like we said Amar, it's while he's doing a mitzvah. You have to stand and show him respect because now he's a chariot. They were chariots even when they ate and slept. They were doing a mitzvah. In their mind, it was 100% service of God. Know God in all your ways. All your deeds should be for the sake of heaven. That they lived that they were aware of it. It was part of their awareness. Their whole life. That's what it was. And every Jew, when he does a mitzvah, he's in that level. And if we try to fill our days with mitzvahs, then we could be that like that for most of the day. Not only also when we work and when we eat and sleep, and we do it in a way which assists us in serving God and makes us healthier, stronger people. And we use that health and strength to do more good to the world. To do more mitzvahs, to be more kind, to help ourselves, to help others, and to do God's will, then we're letting Hashem ride on us. So while we do have the potential to have our own agenda, we're letting Hashem control. We're letting Him, putting ourselves in that Hashem is the autopilot. He's the autopilot.
He's running the show.
He's running a show, yeah. So this extends from the most physical acts, like we know, to more sublime, like doing, so we have doing physical things for the sake of heaven, like eating and sleeping and drinking and procreating. We have on a higher level, which is doing mitzvahs, walking to shul, putting on tefillin with our hand. We have on a more higher level, which is the power of speech, saying words of prayer, words of Torah, words of praise to Hashem, and using our brain to think about Hashem, and understand Torah, understand godliness. We could use our body to be a vehicle to Hashem. In other words, our whole reality, our whole existence is here to proclaim the oneness of Hashem, that Hashem is the only true reality in the world. I think we're going to we have another whole portion of the chapter which is talking about a higher level within this, which is Torah versus mitzvahs, but we'll stop here. I want to end with an interesting thought which brings this out, that which is connected more to the next part of the chapter, but the Alter Rebbe points out that only us in this world have this ability. So there's of being a chariot to Hashem. All the higher worlds, the angels, they don't have this concept of nullifying themselves to God. They might be holier than us in many ways, but potentially we have the ability to be on the holiest level, to be a vehicle to God. The angels, they're a vehicle to God, but not by choice. That's what they are. Only a Jew who has, like the 2017 cars, who has another agenda going on in his life, but what do you call it? He could.
Here it says driverless, but that's not what we're talking about. That it'll drive by itself. That's not what you're saying.
Yeah, not yet. I mean, but the concept it does some things by itself. We have the angels don't have the ability. They don't have such a concept. All they are is a vehicle to God. That's their.
They don't have Bechira Chavshi.
That's how they were created.
Designed.
That's how they're designed. We, by contrast, have the ability to turn off those features in our vehicle and let Hashem drive it the way He wants. And we could tap into the greatest heights, to Hashem's essence, which is down here in this world. So Chassidus, it's not a science book, but it has once in a while different scientific observations which help us understand such concepts. There's an interesting phenomenon that when you go up on tall mountains, it gets colder. Right? In summer, people go up to the mountains. Why?
Cooler.
It's cooler. Why is it cooler? It's closer to the sun, huh?
It should be hotter.
It should be hotter, right? I never thought of that.
There's more wind in there.
Huh?
And the air is thinner. There's a few reasons probably. I don't know. We have to look it up.
Why is the heat on Everest, on top of Mount Everest? There you can't really relax.
Should be the hottest up there.
Should be the hottest. The closer you are.
But the air gets thin. Things change.
You go up in space. Part of the reason why they have this thermal suit because it's very cold. On the moon, it's really cold.
Should be burning up.
No,
the
if
moon
you're out of
is
sight
much
of the sun.
hundreds of miles, thousands of miles. Is the moon thousands of miles?
The moon,
Up or not?
283,000 miles, I think.
Right.
Oh, by the way, it's not 400. The moon is the ratio is 396 to 400. So the moon is a tiny bit, the ratio of the distance to the diameter. Because I stated last week that it was the same. In fact, it's not the same. Because I posed the question because I thought God, that could be a way that God can actually punish the planet by having the sun being snuffed out by the moon.
No, but it's much smaller than that.
Well, the totality, the distance. So the moon is just the totality. It doesn't happen all the time. So the Earth is okay. It's definitely okay.
It's all.
We don't have to lose sleep over it for another.
Yeah. If you just keep doing mitzvahs, don't be scared of global warming, flooding. As long as we do mitzvahs, then the world is safe.
Well, the terrorists are going to run up and down the Shabbat.
Huh?
Whenever there's a
Yeah, I'm saying that's for the world. Anyway, so why is it that higher up in the mountains, we're actually closer to the sun, it gets colder? So the Hasidic explanation for it, which I think is also scientific, is that the sun, that what we're feeling is the reflection. The closer we are to Earth,
Reflection.
the heat of the sun kind of bumps in to Earth, and the closer we are
To the earth.
to the lower level, we feel the heat more.
Because it
I-
emanates from the
it's
core.
actually-
From the earth.
Yeah, and even the core of the earth is hot.
Oh,
Yeah, no,
so-
but I don't think
but-
that's what we feel. We're feeling the
No.
heat of the sun.
Probably.
But why are we feeling the heat of the sun? Because this is where the sun, the rays stop here. This is where they hit down,
So, yeah.
and the heat comes back up. That's why. So this thought, this scientific, interesting. I don't know which category of science this falls under. What is this?
Thermodynamics, heat transfer.
Earth science.
I don't know.
Yeah, earth science.
Explains
Astronomy.
this concept very, very well. We are the body. Soul is the divine. Divine shines through many levels, many worlds, angels and souls, but only when it reaches the bottom. There's something called Or Chayzer, reflecting light. Only when it reaches the lowest level, there's a reflect back, and that's why when we're at the bottom of the food chain, so to speak. Not really, but we're at the bottom we're the lowest world. But since we're the lowest world, we were given that ability, and that's why we could also bask in the warmth of the mitzvahs more than anyone else. Our world benefits the most from the mitzvahs, although we're the furthest away.
Why are we the furthest away?
The mountains are closer to the sun, but we are the furthest away from the sun, so to say, from godliness, with our coarse physical being. But precisely because we're the end, we're the bottom. That's where this is the final destination, and we could not only draw into us the divine light of Hashem, we could also actually benefit from it and feel the warmth in the strongest possible level.
The most potential.
And we have the most potential, and we could benefit from it more than anyone else, and everyone else actually benefits from it based on how we receive it. If we receive it well, we do mitzvahs properly, the whole world, the whole universe, and the higher worlds, they're all waiting for us. That says that in a Yom Yom that the Alter Rebbe once said that the angels, they have tremendous envy of a Jew saying Amen Yehesh Merabah. If you would know how much the angels wish they could do that for a physical mouth to say those words of prayer, Amen, may Hashem's name be blessed. Since it's physical, it has such a great potential. The angels could only envy, and they could only look from far. Only we could feel that impact that the sun has on the earth. Only the physical Jew could feel the impact of godliness penetrating physicality, which is the greatest possible feeling there could be. Only because he's the lowest, and that's that special power that we have. So here we spoke about one level of the Merkava, which is actually what we call Merkava, being a vehicle for godliness. The lower level, which is using physical objects and more precise.
Tefillin.
Tefillin on in a more broader level. A Jew, while he is doing a mitzvah, not only the object of the mitzvah, he himself is being a vehicle for the mitzvah. Tomorrow we're going to go into a higher level, which is why Torah has a greater advantage over mitzvahs. It says that someone who studies Torah the entire day, which doesn't really exist anymore, not only anymore, it existed even in times of the Talmud, it was very rare. Such a person, like Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai was an example, he is exempt from praying. We're going to learn about the special uniqueness of Torah over mitzvahs. Mitzvahs is divine meaning brought into physical objects. Torah is a step higher. Torah has a certain edge over mitzvahs, which we're going to learn about next week. That the oneness that is affected by learning Torah, studying Torah.
What did they do when they went out and they were burning people when they would look? Shimon bar Yochai and his son also?
Right.
So what did they do? They went back to the cave?
So they were sent back to the cave after that incident.
And then how did they come down? So they lost that power?
They didn't lose it, they contained it.
Oh, so they were able to look without burning things?
Yeah.
Oh, so they need to come back to learn?
That says that for later on, Rabbi Shimon's son still did it. Rabbi Shimon had the power of healing.
Oh,
So whenever he would burn, he would fix.
oh wow.
And eventually he, if seems like he understood. Well, we'll talk about it next week. It's a good way to get into it.
I looked. It says here that as you go up, the temperature drops about 5.4 degrees per 1,000 feet. A large part of this is due to the difference in pressure between ground level and altitude. I guess when the pressure changes, like I know that if you squeeze a pint of ice cream, it'll warm up. If you squeeze the pressure, will bring the temperature up.
So the impact of the
the pressure will it'll become softer sooner, and you could eat it if it's frozen. The pressure raises.
To know if anyone's in a rush for the ice cream.
Yeah.
So this is the impact of the sun on the mass of the earth probably brings some more heat.
Yeah, that too. Of course, that's what keeps it going. I guess.
Yeah. All right. Stop.
And they cool off. You ever